we interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
I'm back. That still has a nice beat to it. Still seated twerking to bounce. New year, and that song still has a vibe in 2025. Also, it's time for a new intro. I am in with a podcast change. I added the F.A.A.F.O to it, but I'm back with the same formula that has allowed me to be successful in the past. I've set realistic intention. I plan on being present and following through, but I still intend to remain petty and hold grudges. Not all intentions need to be positive. Also, I will be unengaged and unbothered by people and things in my life that do not serve me. That means parasitic people, unsolicited judgments, biased newspapers, and mainstream banks. I will not apologize for maintaining my mental peace. Happy and unbothered and at peace because I'm at unbothered. All day, every day, being unbothered is my way. Join me. Everything culminates in our ability to basically embrace change. Chaos is a source for positive change. And if you can get this mindset, it is an awesome shift, a powerful mindset to have. Disruption is not always a disaster. You have to be able to have the energy to seek the possibilities. You have to have a necessary period of deconstruction before a better creation can emerge. You retain hope and you use this pause created by chaos to your own advantage. You look at what you can control right around you. Sometimes you gotta go, not necessarily Alice in Wonderland, but more of the Wizard of Oz. Home is where the hope is. Home is where it can be security. And you got to practice something called Hopecore. You look for and amplify positive elements. If this means limiting news consumption, cut the TV off. Stop doom strolling. Recall what you did in the past to remind yourself how you are going to be able to get through this challenging period. You got to basically deconstruct to construct something new. It's novel. I'm going to save my energy for opportunities. I got to embrace the discomfort, because that is the only way I'm going to be able to navigate this choppy waters. I'm going to stop asking what now and not why me, but I'm going to practice, let's just get it. You know what I mean? Basically, take this as a time to confirm the old trajectory, what my new realities and what my new intention is going to be. And then move accordingly, because that's the only way we're going to be able to get through this. Set your intention, clarify your values and where you want to go. That's how you're going to navigate that. Now that's a word right there. Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. So take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow. I can go anywhere. Friends to know and ways to grow, a temporal rainbow. So take a look, it's in a book, a tinfoil rainbow, a tinfoil rainbow, a tinfoil rainbow. A windy Sunday afternoon, blowing away all of the rain clouds. It's actually turning out to be a really great day, but it's also a great day to podcast. So let's get to it. Fear of all things AI. Y'all, AI or generative AI ain't all bad. The tool is only as good as its users. And yes, there are some people that are doing some unethical and downright illegal stuff with copyright infringement, but there you go. You're always going to have for every person that tries to do good, there's always somebody trying to do some shady shit so they don't have to work as hard and try to glow up with them. So there it is. However, it depends on where you are or where we were in the grand scheme of things. Because October is either the beginning month for the longer, used to be for the longer writing competition to encourage 50,000 words, first drafts from October to December, but the more intentional November was NaNoWriMo's novel writing month. There was forums and a lot of workshops that was sponsored by this organization for over 25 years from what I've heard. However, several things happened. Back in 2025, I did not know, and this is me being not getting off of not reading anymore of the New York Times, getting rid of my multi-year subscription. I do still have a subscription to the Times Free Press here in Chattanooga, but I very rarely read that. And except for CNBC, watching the financial news, I really don't watch a whole bunch of news. And now I'm off Facebook. I don't even get news reels or news alerts anymore from NBC or ABC or anything like that anymore. I get, unless my sister tells me something and I go to look it up, or I see something come across on Instagram, because that's where I primarily am now. But I say all those things to say is I started and learned about NaNoWriMo back during the pandemic. Actually, maybe it was 2019 when I decided I wanted to rewrite my book. And I used that as an opportunity to start that process. And I participated right up until I closed on this house where I'm actually posting or now create my podcast. But the organization officially closed back on 2025. Some of the things that were cited was the financial struggles, a downward trend in participation over several years. There was some issues with generative AI, but as well as some blockbuster, crazy Real Housewives of the world kind of drama around community trust. And I've been saying this for a while. I just got into Octavia Butler. She notoriously had severe writer's block and some health issues that I'm sure contributed to it, and inappropriately treated or not treated anxiety. I think that AI would have helped her so much. And I'll basically put some alternatives to that competition, just so you guys know. There's Pro Writing Aid, the NoV, the Order of the Written Word O2W, and AutoCrit's Novel 90 Writing Challenge. I'll put all the contact information to all of that in the podcast notes. But the issue with AI NaNoWriMo's, their position was they neither explicitly supported nor condemned the approach to writing, including the use of tools that leverage AI. They had classist and ableist argument. I don't know. If you condemn it, could be considered classist or ableist. The rationale says that opposing AI ignores the financial and cognitive challenges faced by some writers, suggesting that AI tools could be a necessary form of accessibility or accommodation for those with disabilities or those who can't afford professional human editing and feedback. There was backlash and fallout. People resigned, loss of sponsors, and the whole undermining of the spirit of the challenge. But even in its amended statement, apologized for wording used in the ableism, classism claim and acknowledging the harm done by bad actors in the generative AI space. But it maintained its position of neutrality on the use of AI tools. What I saw it as, is an effort to gatekeep. When you say no across the board, you basically gatekeep the ethical usage of generative AI. You have valid concerns about plagiarism and intellectual property and quality, but you always carry a significant and unintended consequence to just suffocate creativity and equity. You discourage new processes. You basically says if you shun AI, you basically shun your chance to discover new human-led creative processes that could augment and accelerate by the ethical use of the technology. Everything becomes the same. Individual creativity, the output of AI-assisted content can be more similar than purely human-generated content, but you also, if it's used incorrectly, because if you let everybody out the gate and you create some really good stuff, like I hope I'm creating, you actually can create something that pales in with everything else that's on the market. Everybody's writing a memoir. Everybody's writing a trauma bonding over those things. What if I could create something faster that is of higher quality than what is already being accepted into publication? What about if I couldn't afford a human editor or beta readers or copywriters for critical assistant? That means my work won't even get out there if you ban it. So, and disabled writers with brain fog, dyslexia, dysgraphia, some of those things that could have held up, like somebody with a creative spirit and needed output, it could have been a tool for the always cash-strapped Octavia Butler. What if she actually had access to it and was able to use it effectively to create and finish the series more than people like me attempting to create and carry on her narrative in my voice, and it could just be just as good and just as entertaining? You stifle innovation when you prohibit its integration. Because if I use something that my information is ethically sourced and I use transparent tools, what more could I bless the world with being able to use this tool? In short, while you try, the intent to ethically gatekeep is to uphold the integrity of the creative process, there is an unintended consequence that it can be more exclusive, less diverse, and ultimately less innovative creative community. And all of those words mean it would just be boring as hell and vanilla, and nobody ain't trying to read or purchase any of that. So, also, what I also found crazy was the form safety scandal. This also back in 2023. Somebody alleged that one of the longtime volunteer moderators was engaging in inappropriate behavior. Dude was grooming minors and directing them to fetish websites. You mean to tell me he all up in there being pervy and nobody said anything? And these allegations were multiple people and community outrage over a period of years. Ignored, dismissed, and inadequately dressed by the staff. That's why they should have shut your ass down. It wasn't because of this namby-pamby stance on AI. It was also a way that y'all actually handled this type of behavior and the inappropriateness of this type of behavior. Finally, in late 2023, all of the evidence and then FBI was notified. What had happened was, because they basically said the moderator was finally removed, but they said unrelated code of conduct violations, and not until after the investigation was in full bloom and after the many years of complaints against the same person. The NaNoWriMo forums went into read only. The unintended consequence was years of community history and communication was actually wiped out or archived. Nobody had access to it. And so the users that depended upon it couldn't access the things that actually help within their writing community. How the organization downplayed the crisis, failed to implement necessary safety precautions. They should have got rid of his ass years ago, and then them gaslighting the community itself, all led to an overall distrust and a withdrawal of support. And that led to people leaving, nobody trusted, and again, when you withdraw all of the actual people, they take their money with them. So they had nothing but to close back in April because it was a ghost town. It was not sustainable in its current state, which is sad. But as I said, other alternatives, whether you use generative AI or not, are available to you, and I'll actually put the connections to those sources in the podcast notes. For everyone that has been following me for the last couple of weeks, I have been alternating between talking about my twin destiny. My plan is, if I can get my knees under control before March and also get the money up through investments, I want to go to Korea. So I've done this historical fiction about twins separated at birth. Of course, they're girls, and of course, they go to separate from Korea to Japan. And I've learned a lot. But I've also, it's continuing in the vein of Octavia Butler and her Parable series. I love Parable of the Talents. I've dug Kindred, but she died before she could actually finish the 6 or 7 book series, and she notoriously had severe writer's block. And I, born 20 years, like after she was, and having access, not only having a financially stable that I can create and then use have access to the tools that will allow me to create things, I think this would have allowed her to the opportunity to continue to bless us with her creativity. I attempted to use AI to write the initial prologue of my book, The Trickster, a Parable, in the vein of what she meant, because hers is a tale of a post-apocalyptic world of the pox ushered in by an administration that, quote unquote, wanted to make the world great again. Hers was from a time, she died even before some President Obama was even elected. I think that would have given her more hope. But the rot that she saw in climate warming, the go-go days of Reagan, and the dissolution of a lot of the services under the guise of Reaganomics, truly was the rant of a man with advanced Alzheimer and had no basis in economic reality. This is how she crafted her parable, and though the world of the parable based on that. A lot of it is spot on, because there are some of the things that we are experiencing now is completely applicable to when she wrote this way back in the late 90s and published in 2000. What I did not want or could not use was the idea of us being on the struggle bus and still being able to get to outer space. Because what I do know is we do and have the means and access to technology that we could experiment with now that could actually stabilize the rot that is happening in our society now, to allow us to go to space, because it would be a danger to basically get caught up there and have to basically wing it when we actually have the technology that we don't have to wing it. And there is a possibility to actually create a Wakanda-like society here, at least I can imagine it in my mind, because I don't want to take the same rot, the same hierarchical, racist thinking to outer space. What would be the purpose of creating Acorn or extending Acorn in the Earthseed-based community in space when we couldn't even figure out the basic needs here on Earth? Why couldn't we, in our smaller community, and not have to struggle to have clean water, clean air, and uncontaminated food? You know what I mean? So that was one of the reasons why I had the idea to basically rewrite the prologue and using the tools that were not available, and access to other concepts that were not even available to Octavia Butler back in 2003, 1990 or 2000, when this book was first actually, the Talents, Parable of the Talents, was actually written. And it also, I think, gives it a new dynamic. And it also gives me a focus to, again, take us from the struggle bus to create a world that is, I would think, is completely plausible. And how would you use the tools in an ethical and a good way to be able to let society, and society as a whole, advance? Sometimes you got to implode it to actually rebuild it, and to rebuild it in a way that actually makes sense, using the tools that you have available to you in a positive way. Also, giving grace to those that hold on to the old way and can't adapt, and looking at because that's what a parable, it actually teaches you, also teaches you a lesson. If you hold on to the ways and you're not able to adapt, this is what happens. Either you get annihilated or you basically swing the opposite way. Either way, there's a punishment and there is a reward for your inability to adapt with change. Not all chaos is bad, just like not all chaos is good. It's somewhere in the middle, and you can just adapt and adapt in a positive way. So here we are with the new prologue from my version, The Trickster, a parable. From our subterranean sanctum, the world above was not a constant hum of chaos, but a carefully curated stream of data. The truth was not what was reported, but what was concealed. The official news agencies, NPR, or even Associated Press long since buckled under the Jarrett's administration's pressure by defunding and incarceration of anyone considered a dissident. Promoted sensationalist distractions, gossip, celebrity crisis, and religious fervor, all designed to cover up the real story. The slow, agonizing collapse of the food chain and the horrific expansion of the labor camps. The Acorn Earthsea community had been one of the earliest, most tragic victims of this systemic failure. Their destruction framed as necessary military action against renegade cultists. We use blockchain, the collab, to log the truth. Every piece of propaganda, every media blackout, every real-time data spike in the dwindling water tables was recorded, validated, and time-stamped, creating a shadow history. The world above could lie, but the immutable ledger of the collab could not. This created a strange internal paradox. The digital currency we minted, the collab, was meant to be a force for liberation, yet criminals and savvy market actors immediately co-opted the system. Jarrett's administration, in a panic effort to keep the economic system afloat, tried to use our technology to validate their own failing currency, ironically adding a layer of transparency that ultimately hastened their demise. Jarrett himself had become obsessed with using our technology to gain ultimate power, pouring resources into government quantum labs. Still, he was losing the war not to us, but to the crazed homicidal fanatics within his own ultra-conservative base, who saw technology as a heathen tool and his own government as weak. One day, while monitoring the unsecured transmission loops, a burst of raw, unfiltered data ripped across our screens. A video feed from a low-grade satellite that the government thought had been decommissioned years ago. The quality was poor, grainy, and flickering, but the message was horrifyingly clear. We were looking directly into the mess hall of a real red mill facility, one of Elon Bezos' corporate workhouses. The scene was pure pandemonium. Guards in their corporate red trim were trying to hold a line against a surging, emaciated crowd of workers. There was no riot over freedom, no protest against slavery. This was a fight for simple survival. The usual meal of protein paste had been delivered short, drastically short. We watched the desperation turn instantly into violence as men and women clawed at each other over nutrient tubs. Run analysis, I ordered, my voice tight. Correlate with red mill harvest logs. Jackson, Pollock, J.P. Brown, running the quantum computing processes worked swiftly. It's worse than we thought, Tash. I think I need to add running the worked swiftly. The voice activated. Commands more rapid. than any keyboard. So this is like kind of like Siri on crack. But anyways, it's worse than we thought, Tash. The logs show the largest rice and bean harvest in 3 quarters was taken from the facility yesterday. They've been stripped bare. And where did the harvest go? Corporate records show it was routed directly to Christian America Central Distribution Hub in voice-activated commands and digital outreach. How can it says I movement translated more rapidly than any keyboard. Okay. Then we stripped bare. And where did the harvest go? Corporate records show it was routed directly to the Christian American Central Distribution Hub in Oklahoma, a gift from Bezos to Minister Duran, probably for political protection. The connection was stark. The workhouses were being starved to feed the religious zealotry of Christian America, trading life for political stability. It was an appalling display of the New World's economy, human flesh traded for political dogma secured by corporate greed. But the story wasn't over. The transmission jumped. Now we were watching a convoy of trucks, clearly marked with Christian America cross and stylized eagle, moving fast along a dilapidated stretch of I-40. The trucks full of red mill harvest were intercepted. The interception was brutal but efficient. A group of masked riders, not government or corporate mercenaries, but independent scavengers, outlaws, swarmed the convoy. They didn't take the trucks. They offloaded the crates and barrels, transferring them to their smaller, faster vehicles. The food meant for devoted members of Marcus Duran's community was being stolen. Track the new routing, I commanded, my hands, my eyes darting across the terminal. The data returned a grim answer. The stolen food wasn't being used to feed another Earthsea commune or any other humanitarian effort. It was being sold. Black market, Tash, JP confirmed, shaking his head. They're dumping it on the local gray markets in what used to be Memphis. High price, untraceable. This food is going to the rich and the opportunists, not the desperate. The hypocrisy was sickening. Christian America, preaching order and self-sufficiency, was wholly dependent on the slave labor of workhouses. In turn, its own supply lines were so weak they were being raided by common criminals. The system was eating itself alive. Their fixed world was a complete lie. We are witness the final brutal truth of the Pox era. The collapse of centralized power created not just chaos, but a vacuum that anyone, whether a black market trader or a trickster prophet, could exploit. This chaos, this failure of the old world order, was the fertile ground in which Earthsea was even able to survive. The more the surface world failed, the more vital our subterranean self-sufficiency, our digital collab, and our hydroponic gardens became. We were a tiny, living island of order in a sea of unraveling lies. This goes to what I created as an introduction. A trickster can take many forms for good or not. The seemingly random nature of God's change highlights that change isn't always good or predictable. Sometimes it takes on a destructive, trickster-like form as seen in the societal collapse, environmental disasters, and the violent conflicts of Octavius' post-apocalyptic parable novels. The trickster's lessons are about adaptability, outsmarting a rigid system, and using cleverness to survive. This is precisely what Larkin, Lauren's kidnapped daughter, Natasha's collab community, and Lauren Amina and her followers must do to survive. The Trickster's chaotic nature reflects the world's collapse, and the Trickster's cleverness is a core quality of the characters who manage to survive it, for good or for bad, right? I also wanted to make a clear demarcation into the difference between the world of old, because I think it's Parable of the Talents, where Lauren's father basically dies, or he comes up missing, and we never really find out what happened to him because a body was never found. But I bring him back up as when you hold on so tightly to the old ways, what happens, what could actually happen to you. I wanted to make that, I start out with that stark comparison between him and to basically intertwine how Marcus Duran, Lauren's brother, basically survives the decimation of their walled neighborhood, and then he gets sold into sex slavery, and then he becomes high up in Christian America's regime. Then he himself basically sells out his own sister, and to get her labeled a heretic only because he wants to be the man in Christian America, he basically sells the community out and gets her child kidnapped. And to basically how the community of the collab was actually available, and even though they were literally underground and off-grid, the intellectuals, that it could have been a place where, if he hadn't held so closely to conventional religion, he basically could have not only saved his own family, but the rest of that community. They wouldn't have gotten burned out. I basically addressed what a lot of the loose strings I thought was in the Parable of the Talent, and basically how it became full circle, and how using the technology that we know now can actually build a Wakanda-like world that could allow us to eventually get to the stars, and probably get there faster, and probably not have to be on the struggle bus, because we at every single stage of our advancement, we would work out the kinks to be able to advance. That is how I see it. And even though by hiccups and there with war and rumors of war, we still can actually progress, I think the future for a truly advanced society is really probably in the stars. But we can't take the old world into the new world, or any such possible mistakes as that would allow our filtration system and our food sources to actually be destroyed. Ain't nobody got time for that. And ain't nobody it is not, you can still have conflict and a suspension of disbelief without having to be on the struggle bus. That's just my style. This is based on an idea of Octavia Butler, and I think it is I'm just trying to further it, but it's not, I don't write like her, I don't sound like her, and I have access to things now that she didn't have access to, and as I learn the tools, hopefully I can put out a better product. And I hope you would actually stay with me as I continue not only participating in the novel writing challenge, but also creating a product that other people would want to read. I got like, I'm about 41,000 words down, a little over 9,000 more plus to go. I hope I do a good job. I just want to do a good job of relating a story that allows people to, you can be entertained, but you can embrace change and make change work for you. You know what I mean? And still enjoy life and still just, it's so much more than, life is just so much more than what you could actually make it. You're only limited by your ability or inability to experience it, I think. Calculus of the street to blockchain. In the late hours when Marcus recited proofs from memory and Sarah spun stories of exile and resilience, I remembered the calculus of the streets, the way information pulsed through networks, invisible to those in power. We weren't inventing anything new. We were translating old survival strategies into modern code. We were reclaiming what was already ours, the right to build systems that serve those who had been left out. That is Natasha Standerson from her work From Thesis to Actual Reality. Of course, I'm going to make the inventor of Bitcoin a black woman. It would be apropos, you know what I'm saying? But also speaks to our resilience and our ability to create and to just be to something positive, to look beyond that. Someone that looks like myself could actually be doing these things. And then there's someone that holds on to old world convention even though it soothes them, but there's no safety in the past. This is Reverend Joshua Olamina, Lauren Olamina's father. The ride home from the university was supposed to be the quietest part of my day. A professor of history, I was used to the noise and chaos of a classroom full of restless minds, the constant drone of the city outside. The distant sirens no longer held any meaning. The routine was a comfort. I was grateful to have a job, so I kept my head down and avoided mixing with other staff for fear of being classified with those who disappeared. Not all who disappeared were incarcerated. Some, in fact, literally found their way to a new parallel society underground. While many fell victim to the regime's workhouses or simply vanished into the machinery of control, a few managed to slip through the cracks and join the hidden networks. The collab became a sanctuary for those clever or desperate enough to escape, a testament to resilience and adaptability of the human spirit. So foreign, so fanciful such a place could exist in fractured society left by the pox. Isolation became a shield. It was safer not to draw attention or form alliances when the boundaries of safety were so fragile. My fear of the outside world didn't just breed isolation, it drove me deeper into the arms of Christian fundamentalism. Instead of adapting or resisting, I doubled down on old doctrines, refusing to embrace technology or to network with those who did. I shielded my children, especially Lauren, from the digital world and all its possibilities, believing that strict faith and rigid boundaries would protect them from chaos beyond their walls. This resistance to change, born from anxiety and pride, left our community vulnerable in many ways I couldn't foresee. Yet, for all my cleverness, absolute isolation still haunted our little wall enclave. I was cut off in more ways than one, by choice, by fear, by walls the world had raised around us. What stings most looking back is how little I knew of deeper networks threading through the city, the actual underground, a web of secret routes and hidden doors that could have ferried us to safety, all the way to the rumored sanctuary in the Nevada desert. But the knowledge never reached me. In hindsight, I realized my pride kept me from imagining anything outside of that God on high, God protecting me. I clung to the comforts of tradition, even as the world around me fell apart. That stubborn faith in the old ways blinded me to the more adaptive, trickster like instincts for survival that the times truly demanded. I was too insulated by my own routines, too cautious, and perhaps too proud to step beyond the boundaries I'd set for myself. The escape route stayed hidden just out of sight, and the blindness ultimately sealed the fate of so many, including my family. I would leave my office at 5:15, that last bell still echoing in the empty halls, and the 15 blocks to our neighborhood, a small island of order in an ocean of disorder. It was a pilgrimage, a time of reflection. Today, however, the silence felt different. It was heavy, a thick blanket. My mind was on the upcoming faculty meeting, a dreary affair where we would debate the latest budget cuts. My old suit jacket, frayed at the cuffs, felt clammy against my skin. I passed the usual checkpoints where armed guards in corporate uniforms gave me a once-over. They were nothing but shadows to me, a part of a landscape I no longer saw. But tonight, a new shadow detached itself from the gloom. It wasn't a corporate patrol, it was a patrol of local police, their uniforms mismatched and stained, their faces grim. There were 4 of them, and they weren't looking for trouble. They were looking for something specific. I felt my breath catch in my throat. I had a small amount of cash in my pocket, not much, but enough for them to be interested. I tried to pedal faster to disappear into the fading light. Professor Olamina, a voice called out, surprisingly polite. It was Officer Barnes, a man whose children I'd known from church. He was a good man, or so I always believed, but his eyes were empty now, and his smile didn't reach them. It was a thin, cruel line. Officer, I said, trying to keep my voice even as I slowed the bike. I'm just on my way home. A shame, Reverend, he said, stepping into my path. His companions fanned out behind him, their hands on their holstered weapons. We've had some unfortunate reports. A disturbance down this way. Can you confirm you saw nothing? I shook my head, my heart a hammer against my ribs. No, nothing. The street was quiet. Barnes nodded slowly, his eyes raking over me. I wasn't a large man, but I was well fed by the standards of our community. The gardens we all tended, the harvests we shared, meant that hunger that gnawed at so many in the city had not yet reached our neighborhood. It was a defiance Barnes hated. A shame. A shame to see a man of God riding alone at night. So much temptation. The word temptation hung in the air, a coded threat. I knew what he meant. He wasn't talking about vice. He was talking about opportunity. He was talking about me. Before I could respond, a blow landed on the back of my head and the world dissolved into a blinding flash of white and then black. When I woke, I was in a cage, a metal box too small for me to stand upright or stand up straight. My head throbbed, a sour taste coated my tongue. The air was thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and fear. I was on the back of a truck, rattling along a rutted road. The other occupants were silent, their faces gaunt, their eyes wide with terror. They were the anonymous, the forgotten, the ones who had fallen through the cracks, the ones who had been sold. I tried to stand, but the ceiling of the cage pressed down on me. I was a man of words, of history, of God. I was not meant for this. The thought was a stone in my gut. I had no illusions. I knew what this was. I had read the history, seen the patterns. With slavery reinvented for a new age. The corporate workhouses, or rehab centers as they were officially called, were nothing more than a new form of human bondage. Government sanctioned to provide large corporations with a steady stream of free labor. For days, we were transported down the pockmarked, crumbling asphalt of the interstate, a cracked and overgrown monument to a time when travel meant progress. The truck rattled and bounced, each jarring motion a reminder of my broken reality. We drove towards Van Horn, Texas, the name a cold, distant promise of a destination I did not want to reach. The sun beat down on the metal cages, turning them into ovens. I whispered to the man beside me, a gaunt, shivering young fellow, "Do you know where we're going?" Before he could answer, a guard slammed his baton against the metal of the cage, the sound a sharp, brutal clang. We were given water and gruel, a thin, grayish paste that tasted nothing but cornmeal and salt. It was a harsh reminder of the full-bellied meals I had taken for granted back in our walled community, where the food came from the rich, dark soil of our shared gardens and the water from our own well. Here we ate not to live well, but to simply not die. The truck stopped at various points, picking up more lost souls, the young, the old, the able-bodied, and the weak. It didn't matter. We were all a product now, a piece of inventory to be counted and to be sold. We arrived at the gates of the Red Hill Manufacturing and Distribution Center. The gate was a towering wall in steel, topped with the razor wire and guarded by armed men with automatic rifles. The symbol of the company, a blood red stylized mountain, was painted on the gate, a testament to its power and the will of its founder. Red Hill manufactured the very tools of our containment: communication discs, virtual reality viewers, and the various digital peripherals that kept the masses sedated. The company was the brainchild of Elon Bezos. Yes, I know that's a little bit on the nose, but oh well. The world's first known trillionaire, a man who believed workers were as expendable resources to be consumed and discarded for the sake of profit. So I know you basically picked up on how I worked Red Hill, Elon Bezos into this story from the prologue, which a riot was picked up on the collabs peripheral monitoring of communications. And all of this stuff is possible. I think hackers are going to view the world, but the hackers are going to basically be contained to be able to get the correct, actual information, and to basically preserve history and the truth, and to record a lot of this, because a lot of what is going on in my story, as well as in real life, I know somebody is more petty than I am. Somebody is playing a long game. They're recording all of the volatility and the stupidness of some of the people that say things and then things sway in a different way. I can tell you that people play the long game and they're just gathering information for the final showdown. Probably one, and I always keep saying this, we're possibly, I think someone is basically gathering information to the largest and most extensive fraud case the world has ever been, the world could actually ever be, could ever imagine. The Nuremberg case of fraud. Remember when the Nuremberg trial were used to convict the last of the Nazi regime? Can you imagine for some of the shenanigans that are going right on right now, as far as all of this geopolitical climate catastrophe. Somebody is taking records and keeping names and creating one of the largest level worldwide Nuremberg trials for the climate catastrophe as well as for the financial shenanigans. Somebody is keeping track of this, and maybe it's buried right in the blockchain, like I basically said. But now I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about who Natasha Sanderson is. The year of 2009 was a paradox. The pox was not yet the pox. The world was still a fragile, deceptive illusion of order, of fixed systems, and predictive futures. On the surface, the internet was a tool for connection and commerce, but beneath it, a darker, more fluid reality was already taking shape. In this pre-prox world, in the cold, sterile hum of the computer lab at the University of Southern California, my friends and I began to build a new kind of world. There's Natasha Sanderson. She's from Oakland. There is Marcus, a gay Jewish guy who watched his family's wealth blow up in the dot-com era. There was Sarah from JPL, second generation Cambodian, whose family, she was actually the grandchild of Hu Nim, a revered Cambodian intellectual, and he had vanished in the shadow of history in the Khmer Rouge genocide. In the late hours, when Marcus recited proofs from memory and Sarah spun stories of exile and resilience, I remembered the calculus of the streets, the way information pulsed through the networks invisible to those in power. For you see, Natasha was the child of numbers runners, bootleggers, and crack dealers. Sound familiar? But anyways, this calculus of the street was the way information pulsed through the networks, invisible to those in power. We weren't inventing anything new. We were translating old survival strategies into modern code. We were reclaiming what was already ours, the right to build systems that serve those who have been left out. To be black in Oakland was to be a statistic and a statistician, to move through the world obsessed with tracking your failures, but blind to your ingenuity. My heritage was not just numbers. It was the knowledge of how to bend them, how to run them through the circuits of hope and desperation. My ancestors were contraband mathematicians, probability artists, tricksters who learned to see through the official versions of reality. And I'm going to now just skip ahead to why they went offline. But I wanted to read this. They talked about how when they created the blockchain and then when the network came and verified itself, they basically realized in that moment the monumentalness of what the technology meant and how it could be used for the good or for the bad. They knew through further conversations, they had to be honest. We spoke not as academics, but as people who had watched their world fall apart, people who had been lied to, and people who had been betrayed. We looked at each other, at a black woman, a white gay Jewish man, and a young woman of Cambodian descent, and we knew the truth. In a world of fixed power, a technology that gave us this much financial power, to people like us, they would not be tolerated. The system would eventually devour the world and would never allow us to hold this kind of power. It would not be seen as a revolution. It would be seen as a crime. They would not just destroy the code, they would destroy us. The myth of Satoshi Nakamoto was born in that moment. It was our shield, our cipher, our ghost. We chose a Japanese sounding name, a non-gendered name, a name that could belong to anyone and to no one. We decided to release the code anonymously, to put it into the world as a public good, a tool for change that would find its own way, that would adapt and grow without us. We would not be its prophets, we would be its midwives. We would watch from the shadows as the world slowly, inexorably began to change around our invention. We were not just protecting ourselves, we were protecting the technology, the idea, the seed. The years between 2008 and 2016 were strained, feverish time. The world was at a tipping point. On the one hand, there was a feeling of a new promising future, a world of connected systems and decentralized power. The blockchain began to gain traction, a slow, quiet hum in the underbelly of the internet. It was adopted by a small, dedicated group of idealists, of anarchists, and of libertarians who saw in it the promise of a truly free, borderless economy. But beneath this promise, a darker reality was rising. The rise of white nationalism was a cancer, a creeping sickness that began to infect the global consciousness. In the United States, Christian America was no longer just a fringe movement. It was a political force, a loud, angry, and unapologetic voice of ultra-conservatism. The rhetoric was a bitter, familiar song of purity and tradition, a song that I had heard my whole life. The God of my big mama and that of the street ministry was that of a fixed, unchanging God, a delusion I did not share. It was a reflection of the world that was beginning to take shape. We watched as our world became a place of new censorships, of old prejudices, and of new brutal form of racism. My years at Alphabet began in a cathedral-like, quiet campus dedicated to the future, a place where every wall was glass and every hallway pulsed with promise of omniscient code. It was during these heady, uncertain times when the world outside trembled with upheaval and the halls of power grew ever more distant that I met him, Stuart Friedman, an African-American man whose physical presence seemed to bend light around him. Tall, broad shoulders with a wit as quick as the quantum leaps he studied. He was not easily overlooked. Originating from Biloxi, Mississippi, Stuart came from a large family of single women, all of whom were teachers. A major agri-firm confiscated his family farm in the guise of urban renewal, only to create a prison-like work farm for the mega corporations. Yet, he remained understanding and embodying greatness as a human being. Some whispered he looked like Megatron than a mortal scowler, but behind the mythic frame was a mind honed by 2 doctorates, one in quantum mechanics, one in computer science. Our first encounter was at the coffee stand on the Alphabet campus, where the baristas pull espresso shots with algorithmic precision and engineers cued in silence, caffeinated devotion. I was clutching a stack of printouts, lost in a storm of calculations, when he appeared beside me, a gravity unto himself. He asked for my notes with the curiosity that cut through my guardedness, and I answered with uncharacteristic candor. We spoke for hours, the hum of invention swirling around us, our ideas colliding and fusing into something neither of us had expected. The social construct of marriage was a relic of the Piscean age, even though we joked about the hippy-dippiness of astrology. The age of Aquarius was much better to focus on than the horrors of the pox. The Piscean age was linked to property and ownership. It did not fit our new order. Our commitment was defined by co-parenting and collaborative survival, not exclusivity. I had one daughter with Stuart, Kai, and our bond was one of fierce, unconditional co-parenting. Stuart also had other children with other women within the collab, and everyone involved, the biological parents and the surrounding adults, form a supportive, extended family unit. There was an ease in this approach, a deep absence of jealousy and possessiveness, because our ultimate loyalty was to the collective survival and the children's well-being. We could work together, co-parent, and share resources with multiple partners if needed, allowing for a more flexible and resilient family structure than the old world ever knew. This fluidity was soon tested and enriched by the addition of Jackson Pollock Brown, or JP. I met JP in a golden Google break room over a game of ping pong shortly before we went fully underground. He was mixed race, black and Samoan, with stunning model-like features, a stark contrast to his quiet, brilliant mind. He grew up in SoCal, the child of a vast, extended family of strong single women, and had been building computers from scavenged components since he was a kid. He was a graduate of Caltech in computer engineering, and his genius lay in optimization and hardware integration. JP was not a threat to our existing family, but an expansion of it. He understood the philosophy instantly, that relationships should serve the collective well-being. He became my second partner, and we later had 2 children together, a boy named Tyreek and a girl named Amira. The 4 children, Kai, Tariq, Amira, and Stuart. Wait a minute. The 3 children. I forgot I only had her have 1 child with Megatron. Sorry. The 3 children, Kai, Tariq, Amira, and Stuart, and JP's other children, 9 in all, were all raised in the communal creche. Stuart and JP, the 2 men in my life, coexisted and collaborated seamlessly, viewing themselves as co-fathers and co-engineers of the collab. The ease of their navigation proved the success of our social experiment. In the new order, love and commitment were not scarce resources to be hoarded, but abundant energies to be shared, ensuring the best possible environment for the next generation. This freedom in relationship mirrored the freedom that would become our mission when we would leave the surface and go to Area 51. Also, I go on and discuss Marcus and his polyamorous relationship. He's gay, but in his relationship, he actually had a bisexual marriage, married to another a bisexual woman, because he used her as a beard and she used him as a penis, because even in this progressive times, same-sex marriages would become something to be penalized, literally. And Sarah, who basically was scared of relationships because of the purge of her family, this generational purge, generational trauma that she carried with her, she basically never also didn't subscribe to being linked to anyone long term. And she navigated, the collective navigated around her and with her, and so she still was a positive influence when the collective as a whole. And I do speak a lot more of so the reader can actually understand who these people were. I also integrate how Bitcoin becomes the currency that basically financed them leaving the surface. And when I basically mention Elon Bezos as being the first known trillionaire, they were trillionaires multiple times over with their creation of Bitcoin and mining the first several millions of tokens once they went underground. So this is when they went under, and why I chose some of the reasons why I chose Area 51. And I know a lot of people, actually, when I was in the military, and there was a reorganization of the bases, and several bases actually closed overseas, as well as several here in the United States. But this is what happened or could have happened to Nellis. I think Nellis is actually has even been expanded. But the mystique of Area 51, and this could have actually, this is a possibility, fictional. Remaking identity beneath the pox. In the warren of Nevada's abandoned corridors, we transform necessity into ideology. Scarcity above became abundance below, not of resources, but of freedom to experiment and redefine. The digitization of hope took shape in the flicker. That's what this is. The digitization of hope took in the flicker of new ledgers, or quantum charge Bitcoin. Not just a currency, but a statement. It was seed, shield, promise, a tool for building something resilient in the shadow of Jared's relentless march. Our break was not nostalgic. The world of the old republic, now overtaken by the pox and Jared's crusade, offered us only the chance to conform or to perish. Instead, we minted our own future, rooted in adaptation, mutual aid, and technological ingenuity. Our work went from theoretical to practical. We needed a place, a sanctuary, a new kind of fortress. We found it in the heart of the desolate desert, in a place that had long been a myth, a legend, a place of government secrets and alien conspiracies. Area 51. In the shadow of Area 51, surrounded by abandoned machines and the ghosts of government secrecy, we built a new kind of contraband. One that didn't destroy but created, one that offered possibility, not escape. Our little group, our small brand of academic rebels began to grow. Others found us who saw the same thing we did. Artists, philosophers, and other brilliant minds who were being systematically erased from the public discourse. We were a secret society, a quiet network of dissenters, all connected by a single powerful belief that the change was all that mattered. Word of our sanctuary began to spread quietly through encrypted channels and whispered code. Above ground, the rise of Jared and the wave of ultra-conservatism brought fresh dangers. Surveillance intensified, dissent was criminalized, and innovation became a hunted thing. For many, cities that had once promised freedom now felt like gilded cages. Area 51's mythos transformed from a relic of conspiracy lore into the beacon for those seeking refuge for the tightening grip of the new regime. Drawn by tales of our experiment in the room of community, other like-minded individuals, disillusioned engineers, rogue scientists, artists, and dreamers found their way to the desert. Each arrival added fresh expertise and purpose, strengthening our underground society. Area 51 was no longer a hiding place. It was a crucible for change, a haven where outcasts of the old world could gather, innovate, and build blueprints of a different future. Together we formed a constellation of insurgent hope beneath the sand, determined to outlast the storms above. With each new arrival, the process of going off grid became ritualistic. Names, histories, digital footprints were methodically erased, leaving no trace in the world above. These individuals ceased to exist in official records, social media, and government databases. Their lives were effectively wiped clean, except for threads that tied them to the community. Within our sanctuary, they found not only refuge, but a new identity, sustained only by the bonds of trust and shared purpose that define our underground society. Let's see. To preserve this invisibility, we assemble a fleet of armed drones. Wait a minute, hold up. Preserving the secrecy of our sanctuary required not just vigilance, but an unprecedented level of digital and physical subterfuge. Our first priority was methodically scrubbing the groomed minds in Area 51 from every accessible database, public record, and search engine index. Teams of cyber specialists infiltrated government and private archives, erasing satellite tags, expunging geological surveys, and overriding references with plausible misdirections. This effort extended beyond the web. We dispatched agents to retrieve or destroy physical maps, microfiche, and even obscure academic papers that could hint at our location, leaving only a ghostly absence where the truth had once been. To preserve this invisibility, we assembled a fleet of armed drones and autonomous surveillance bots patrolling the perimeter around the clock. After Nellis was dissolved and shut down, we also seized a cache of Russia and Chinese weaponry, bullets and munitions that would later supply our drones. Our engineer devised sophisticated techniques to redirect or scramble satellite imagery of the area. By hacking into orbital data streams and employing a network of signal spoofers, we've replaced live feeds with innocuous desert landscapes or outdated images masking all evidence of habitation or unusual activity. Together, these layers of digital erasure and physical defense rendered our existence virtually undetectable, allowing our underground society to thrive in the shadow of myth while the above world remain oblivious to the revolution taking root beneath their feet. I go on to talk about the groomed minds and super gold, newcomers, Phoenicia Baxter with a striking figure with a large graying afro, pun intended, and bringing her family, how you could be smart and then be blacklisted because nobody wants you to have that much power or to have anything in this world. And I'll probably just go into starting next week. I'll continue the story about her family and the demise of the great MIT, and how not only she and her family, but how many you could become a dissident again by being intellectual. And they were basically a racist, or the regime will cut off his nose in spite of his face, basically making it illegal to be of some help to society in your own power grab, and how the dumbing down of society only works for those people that are grabbing power, but these people also will be the end to the regime. So it's like a cycle of absurdity and stupidity. That is the reason why that regime, it can't survive. It will cannibalize itself. So there's always hope, right? But join me next time as I basically speak more of the collab and all of its machinations of its digital revolution underground. And this is where one of the pockets of how society in general can and should be able to survive. Yeah, there's just a whole bunch of unholy amount of information, ungodly information that's coming out on the reality TV world. And what better yet of using the instrumental of Unholy as I record on this glorious Sunday morning. I'm going to go out on a limb to say that if you're not black or identify as a person of color, you may want to keep Dr. F.A.A.F.O and Eddie F.A.A.F.O Esquire's name out your MF mouth. Here's why. Even though, or you could, I know you could risk getting, cancellation is only relative. You can risk getting messed up on the algorithm. But at the same time, I think y'all are having a way too much fun in the device of this black woman on reality TV. There are serious allegations of fraud. They staged a burglary in the most absurd terms and then looked like they conspired to commit insurance fraud. Y'all basically say, and this is not all of them, but most of them, these conversations, they're just covering the news. They highlight there's a unique dynamic between white commentators covering highly sensitive legal and financial issues involving black reality stars. In a guise to say they're covering it and for them to be relevant, some of these people are going live. They're probably getting more people joining their lives more now than prior for the demise of this black woman for a variety of reasons. They feign shock about the allegations of felony, fraud, lying to the police, because they compare it with her Wendy F.A.A.F.O's carefully curated public image as an academic, entrepreneur, and public speaker. How many seasons have she's yelled 4 degrees and had her kids go and look at all of those degrees on the wall? But her kids probably gonna come back smart and say, "You're not even a real doctor." That's funny. Or how many of those degrees actually transmit to funds in your wallet? That's the other thing. I can say that. Y'all can't. There's a difference between her fairy tale post on Instagram and details about they returned a Dior shirt and the email discussing inflating the insurance for maximum payout, but I digress. They prioritize the failure of the public image over the legal facts, which makes the drama about her hypocrisy rather than the systemic issues of reality TV or fraud in general. They're missing the point by sensationalizing her public image downfall. You know what I mean? And there's this narrative that they repeatedly highlight details of the said emails and the Chanel shoes and the inventory where she's wearing the ring that she reported stolen. Be damned if it's actually the Italo version of the $27,000 that they may or may not have had. It could have always been fake and not even worth that. This narrative keeps going on and on. And it basically downgrades how black wealth is and black success is highly scrutinized. It's like their glee and astonishment over the stupidity is elevated because it's like they were just waiting for something like this to happen to make them relevant and viral and to get their streams up at the expense of the well-being of this family. Because at the heart of this, she has 3 really beautiful kids, but But there was some pretense that a marriage may have been on shaky grounds for a variety of reasons, but they just seemed to be happy, way too happy to watch the downfall of this heavily curated family. And I'm really tired of it. Ashley, now that you finally got your payout, it wasn't so long ago that, what did Candace call you? Some type of wench, baby making pro. You wanted to basically stop being a freak, even though you were clearly bi, and you just wanted to be a true housewife, but you couldn't turn over the freakdom. Because y'all couldn't figure that out because of the heavy scrutiny that your marriage had. It was a lot. You got $20 million, it looks like, for your trouble. And now you think you can clown Wendy when not too long ago, not only were you considered messy, they thought you were stupid and vapid. So now you can gleefully go on, now that you got your payout, while she's actually possibly getting ready to show like a jail time. I don't want to hear anything about Karen. It took 5 DUIs and you didn't kill anybody. That's the only reason you serve jail time. Go sit down somewhere. I don't know if she finally got her GED or what, but trouble comes to people no matter what their degree status is. You know what I'm saying? I don't understand this narrative where there's some type of shade and fraud stemming from previous racial charged confrontations, like between, of course, Karen and Giselle, that always question her credibility or family's finance. But there's one of the things that's obvious that I can point out, and I think other commentators like Carlos King has pointed out, and Richie Sky, that it is obvious that this woman, for another variety of reasons, is not well liked within the crux of this cast. And she has been it seems like, on an island for a while. This trouble that she's going through is only highlighting the shade and the valley between her connections, between not only herself, but other people in the Real Housewives franchise. The commentary of these non-black folks is, it's just theatrical. They focus more on the comedic tragedy of this scandal, but they sidestep a much deeper analysis for the implications for this star, her family, franchise, and scrutiny of black public figures. They're ill-equipped to handle the deeper conversations necessary for a scandal of this magnitude. If you're facing 18 felonies, why y'all keep bringing up the stupidity and the absurdity of this? Y'all are idiots because y'all are sidestepping the deeper issue here. What led them to do this? How can the franchise support instead and not necessarily lean in to the sensationalism of how do you fix something like this? And why are y'all so gleeful in the scrutiny of black public figures? Why? What is this? Again, until y'all can become equipped to handle the deep conversations, stop talking about it. And that's all I got to say about that. This last episode of Bell Collective was actually more poignant, and it was actually a pretty heavy episode. I was just glad that Selena did not talk more about her. I don't know if dude's name is Mike or Kevin, whatever his name is, and their lack of communication. I didn't really care. But it was just another tragedy of reality TV. how I can go from ugly crying and just stating in my head anyways, how this is what, and I think Marie said something like this. This is an example of how greatness of the Bell Collective and what we represent, and how it went from the heaviness of celebration, the celebration of life in remembrance of Selena's son that was actually murdered on his way back home to Jackson. It was completely overshadowed by a grown man's embarrassing need for attention. Also, in the shit staring of Latrice, basically keep bringing this woman around. And is she doing it for deflection, or she just like being a pot stirrer? They just got to a place where we're seeing positivity and growth in Marie's business and this new Belle with her fantastic hairstyle. And I don't know too much about her, but she's expanding her business, and how they are working out her being a go-getter, and how she's balancing that with all those kids and her husband. So, and then we have to go back. You know, I'm so glad that Selena's ex-husband with his stupid ponytail and receded hairline is no longer on the show, because I think she is free to navigate how heartbreaking it is for her son, losing her son, and the basis of her daughter bringing new life into this world. She has all those daughters and she has all these grandkids, and she's basically vulnerable, stating that she's not okay and what she is doing to become okay. I was actually digging it, and then it gets hijacked by some man fight between Glendale and the possible jump off Amanda gay partner. It's shenanigans at its full force. Black male foolishness on full frontal display. Glendale, if you got a name like Glendale, it's no wonder that you always in the middle of some mess. But his reputation is already shaky between past rumors and his tendency to act like a disgruntled sidekick. He's always the epicenter of some new drama bomb. Now, as his wife seems to be working on her glow up, you got Glendale back on the oil rigs and still acting stupid. We already think that this is, again, why Latrice keep bringing this lady around. Is she deflecting, or is she doing this because she doesn't have a drama-filled storyline? Did her possible woman-beaten husband, he always give me that vibes. Toxic masculinity, again, on fleek. Is she trying to deflect from her nonsense, or this just popped up? Conveniently popped up. But it just is like watching Glenn try to prove that he's some type of responsible adult while he throws a tantrum in the middle of a funeral. It's like, look at me. This is how I'm relevant by being a villain. It was a complete metaphor. Belle's trying to build beautiful, meaningful legacies while the men are determined to be a distraction. In this case, Glendale. For Selena, it was a profound moment of mourning. For viewers, it was the stunning display on how quickly genuine human emotion can be pushed aside for this husband's desperate need to secure his own spot in the season's villain rotation. And he seems perfectly capable, but like, you gonna feign surprise. You knew exactly what you did as soon as you saw that lady walk in. Girl, bye. They just get on my nerves, and it's such a waste of time and of energy. And I'm thinking they're gonna go live tomorrow night on Reality with the King with Dustin and Claudia. And I wonder what their take is on it, because his reaction seems stupid and fake to me. And it just seems like it was a way for him to be relevant. He knew exactly what he was doing by sliding into that lady's DMs. And that's why Letitia is always one thing or another. She's trying to glow up, but he's trying to do everything he can and what he's known for, and he ain't good at it. But that's how he becomes relevant. We know he ain't good at it. It's an obvious attention grabbing maneuver, and I guess he said, as long as it keep me paid, I'm good. And it doesn't look like Tisha going anywhere, because they still together. Nobody's dropped the receipts about somebody filing for divorce. And what are they gonna file for? I have a feeling they always one step away from financial ruin. I don't think it looked like from y'all follow me on this. It always looked like wherever they were filming last season it seemed like it was always an Airbnb. There was nothing personal about any of where they were actually filming. And I always think they're a step ahead of foreclosure. They always a step ahead of Chapter 7. And there is nothing besides their payment from OWN and Ethel barking that they could actually secure from future income. They could sue for that, but they got so many bills. I don't think that it would be too dramatic. And I don't even think they got the retainer to be able to get legal representation to be able to exit the marriage. So it's cheaper to keep them. I don't know, child, but I don't think I would live or have such a reality where this so-called relationship is too tumultuous and this is a use where the chaos can only lead to positivity if there's actual change from all individuals involved. I don't see that. So if it's positive change where you exit the relationship and then truly glow up, then I could see that. But if you just stand in it for the chaos, nah, I'm good. I'm good on you. And I'm tired of this narrative. Either grow up or get gone. Everybody listening in the listening audience that's really tired of the toxicity about this trifecta of stupid Tamara, Shannon, and Gretchen. They just getting on my nerves. It's not this latest episode of The Real Housewives of OC was just a total absence of resolution. Nobody, except for Tamara, that is willing to move on. And Tamara ain't stupid. She knows that they're not going to be close. They're not going to go out drinking. They're not going to go out even for coffee. She just wants them to get to a state where they can actually film, have fun, and they can get their check. That's the bottom line. What can we do so we all can do our job, so we all can get paid? That's smart to me. But what we've noticed is everybody, they need some type of self-sustaining decade-long employment strategy. We got Shannon and anxiety and demanding that people don't go to her and don't film with her nemesis Tamara, and definitely do not go to the wedding of former boyfriends and former reality TV housewife Alexis Bellino, now Jansen. She basically, and I think they basically, and I was like, how dare you? But I think, what's her name? Heather Dubrow and Goofy Jen just wanted peace because they knew probably more Jen than anything, And because of Heather in her extensive American Express bill, they just wanted Peace to be able to film, and they would be able to say anything just to keep the peace so they can get their check. That is a great strategy, but when you get in the tornado of the Shannon of it all, how much are you willing to give up just to be at peace with that crackhead? It's just a forever cycle through the same stages. Betrayal, screaming, half-hearted apology, then right back to betrayal. We got Gretchen, whose return was to rekindle her ability to get on Tamara's nerves. You got Shannon aligning herself with Gretchen because she gets on Tamara's nerves. And she really only returned to get her money up because she ain't making no money. She's too polished. She just wants to look good and collect her check. And she got that deadbeat Slade wanting it more and pressing her on, but she knows she don't have to do but so much because she's only a friend of. And Shannon is not going to let go. She is not. It is obvious they are never going to be friends, but they got to find some happy medium because she is going to be relegated to the friend of if they let her return at all. Because I know we're tired of the Shannon Bedore, there's the door tornado. We need more than that. In this latest episode, and the only reason why this was hilarious is because it took a whole bunch of weed so we could actually see Heather Dubrow and her, I don't know if it's anxiety or true anorexic ass, eat something. They all trauma bond over weed. The absurdity is they escape the endless gossip cycle from Orange County to Amsterdam. It was supposed to be nostalgic because Heather, who we find out this late, has had a strained relationship with her father. She returns to Amsterdam, even though I don't know when he died, to finally spread his ashes in front of the house that he owned. It took Shannon getting Cootie Brown high off of a space muffin for her and Tamara to come to some resolve. So you mean to tell me all you had to do is give Shannon an edible and we wouldn't have seen her flake out over this entire last season? Girl, bye. And all it took is a barrette. And Gretchen relegated to being a commentary on the absurd couple in half of 50% of which she only, that somebody that she hates. The only reason why she had some type of relevance because her and Shannon were anti-Tamara, but now it seems that weed and a fallen barrette and Tamara willing to crawl under the table to actually retrieve said barrette is the only reason why they actually are going to film. It filmed the stupidest episode and but it relegated to the kind of dim-witted craziness reminiscent of the Trace Amigo heydays. And again, Shannon was high as Cootie Brown. That's the only reason how you can actually film and be funny. That's really sad to me. But I would, instead of having an orange or some type of cocktail, I would actually have an edible on set for them to be able to get through the reunion. I don't know if we, the audience, gonna need to be able to get through that, or if they're gonna be able to need to get through that, because it just seems this whole season has been a continual audition for season 20. where it's becoming obvious where there is no resolve, there is no place on the next season's show. And they really need to consider that. So maybe they may all consider getting some space weed. Either you're going to need to move on or you're going to get demoted. So I don't know. Everybody needs to pay attention and write that down instead of writing down every past transgression stemming back 14 years. Maybe you basically should take notes on this is how you resolve and be able to film so we can all get paid. Because the idea of them canceling somebody because you don't want to film with them is crazy. Y'all ain't got that much pull. None of y'all names are on anybody on this cast check, and y'all need to recognize none of you are Andy Cohen. How about that? You can take the girl out of the hood, but you can't take hood music out the girl. But I'm going to end this with a word, just as I started this podcast. Do or do not do. There is no try. And that's a word from Yoda. I hope I have conveyed just how much fun I have had in creating this podcast. I've got my mojo back. Just set your intention or reset your intention. It could be daily if necessary. Mine is peace. No mental dumping over here. If I'm acting like I'm not listening, I'm probably not. I'm not your therapist. I'm not a therapist. Keep the crazy to yourself, child. You do you and leave me be. The sooner you figure that ish out, the happy you will be. So this is what I want to convey in this podcast. And that wraps another of F.A.A.F.O has a fro. Join me next time as I throw shade and point out the shade and simply have fun. Y'all have a great new year. What, y'all? What?